Ahlan wa sahlan. This is a traditional Arabic welcome that greets you into my home and into my kitchen, and especially today when you're going to be feasting on some of the best in Middle Eastern foods from Syria and Lebanon. And I want to start my program off today by showing you something new that I've adapted on my grill. Yes, on my electric grill. You know, you read in the papers about flat grill all the time in magazines, flat bread on the grill. Well, let me tell you something. This is our traditional Middle Eastern bread that we've made for centuries. I'm going to start out by 6 cups of flour, and I'm going to take some yeast, 2 tablespoons of yeast. I'm going to put it to the side of the bowl, and I'm going to take 2 teaspoons of salt and place it at the side of the bowl. I'm going to take my warm water. I've got about 3 cups of water in here. We're just going to pour it slowly to see if we need really all that water in here. I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in there, and I'm going to start by blending it with my hands, just as I incorporate the flour into the yeast dough. And then we're going to eventually have this all incorporated into some of the best tasting yeast dough that you've ever had. And it's so simple. All you have to do is use one hand, really. You see that the texture is a little bit dry. You just add a little bit more water, probably all the water that I put in this container here. I started by telling you that these breads have been talked about recently, known as flatbread. Okay, flatbread, Middle Eastern bread, pocket bread, synonymous with all one and the same that started since the dawn of time. We want to dip our hand a little bit in the water to incorporate this a little bit more. We want to knead this for about 10 minutes so that you'll have a nice pliable dough. Okay, we're just about finished kneading this dough from the heel forward, pushing forward, and now it's just the right texture. I'm going to brush it with a little bit of oil so that it won't dry out. It'll stay nice and moist on both sides. And I want to tell you, we have a very profound Arabic saying, and it goes like this, and it'll assure you a perfect dough. Make the sign of the cross, Yeshua al-Masih ahut fik, Yeshua al-Masih atobet fik. That means, dear Lord, put your blessing on this dough. I tired making it. Now, if you have a perfect raising dough, you'll know that you said the right thing. And I'm going to take a towel here, and I'm going to cover it up, and we're going to let this set to one side until it doubles, about an hour and a half. And depending on how many loaves that you decide to make, you can increase the amount of flour, but this is the right proportions for what we're going to make today, okay? This is going to be your dough for later. Well, I've decided I'm going to roll my sleeves up for making this bread. I want to tell you, look at that dough. See, making the sign of the cross really helped. You get a perfect dough every time. Once you have that indentation in there, you know it's ready to go. I've already balled out a few of these, like about the size of an orange. And you want to roll them around in your hand, cup them up underneath here so the dough is perfectly smooth, and you're going to be ready to use it. We're just going to put that in there. I flattened a few of these out right now because we want to get going. This grill is on, and it's hot, and this is going to be your new way of making flatbread on the grill. And you just want to give it a quarter of a turn and roll it around like so. And if you happen to be inclined to do this sort of thing, that's why I rolled my sleeves up, you can make it as thin as you want. You just flap this bread over your arms, one after another. This isn't going to be too big because the grill can only be about like 10 inches in circumference. We're going to put that on the grill. And after about a minute, when you see the bubble forming, you're going to have flatbread on the grill. And I brought some za'atar out. And you all know what za'atar is. That's like a blend of oregano and thyme with sesame seed in it. And it's just a taste that I can't begin to tell you. It's an import herb. You have to go to a Middle Eastern or Italian or one of those import ethnic stores and able to get it. And as a matter of fact, Middle Eastern people, when they're at a convention, they go out of their way to get their za'atar bread. Now see, that bread is beginning to bubble a little bit. And we're going to have it off the grill in no time at all. I've already made some. I want to show you what I've made. This is the za'atar bread. And this is the blend of za'atar with olive oil mixed together. That goes into the making of the spread on your dough. And you can bake it in the oven at a 350-degree temperature if you're so inclined. These were made actually on my grill, my charcoal grill outside. And it was raining today, so the show is moved inside, and I've done this before on the grill here, my little grill. I've been doing demonstrations on it, and it works very well. So I think we're going to be. And I want to tell you, from this bread, you can make meat pies and yogurt cheese pies, spinach pies, which are just absolutely heavenly. You can encase anything in the dough for some really tantalizing meals. And one of the nice things about them, they can be frozen and brought out at a moment's notice when you've got guests arriving at your home. You don't have to worry about a meal that you're going to have to prepare. Just reach in that freezer, bring them out, and you've got your meal finished. Now this is bubbling up. There it is, it's finished. We'll place that right on here, and we're ready for another one. Go. I think maybe I'll show you how we'll make a yogurt cheese sandwich from this, okay? I'm going to make something for you right now that usually is made on top of the stove. But I'm going to show you a very fast way of making lemon yogurt to you. And it's going to be made in the microwave instead of on top of your stove. Well, let me tell you something before I get into this. The kids love this. When they come home from school, the first thing they want is aruz leban. Aruz leban means some of this Middle Eastern flatbread with some of this cheese yogurt spread on it, a little mint, and that suffices for a complete meal. We're going to do this with a microwave bowl. Usually I make a gallon a week. This is almost a gallon, but not quite. I'm going to pour the whole thing in here. And we're going to set this Corningware bowl into the microwave. And let me put that in here, and I'm going to show you how easy this is done. While we have that cooking in the microwave, let me tell you about the other uses of yogurt. Okay, you have it in its original form as a loose yogurt that you're used to buying in the grocery store. However, from that yogurt, which is entirely different in taste and so much better, this is a yogurt cheese. All the whey has been removed out of it. And this is yogurt in its original form, topped with some cucumbers, made into a cucumber yogurt salad. And that has a little bit of dried mint on top. It's an accompaniment to a lot of your meals that goes great with your grape leaf rolls that you're going to be seeing later. I've just taken out the milk from the microwave oven, and it's steaming, and you see how it poached on top? Now I prepared myself by having this terry beach towel on hand, or you could use a blanket or whatever. Always have that on hand before you put your milk to rest, because you want it to sit there for about 45 minutes. I'm going to put the timer on. 45 minutes will bring it to the right temperature, which is usually about 110 degrees. And then you have the finger test, which I'm going to show you as soon as we get to that point. And then I'll show you the rest of it for some delicious tasting leaven. Okay, now we showed you the milk coming out of the microwave with the poaching of it on top. I removed that poached part of it. Now I'm going to show you what I'm going to do now. It's already set long enough to cool down to the temperature that I wanted to. 45 minutes later, it's ready to have the culture placed in it. This is the culture, which is a previous batch of yogurt or leaven. And if you don't have a previous batch on hand, you go to the store and you buy plain yogurt that says on the side live culture, because that's the benefits that you're getting out of the Bacillus vulgaris that goes into the antibiotic of the making of the beneficial part of yogurt. You want to take a little bit of this warm milk and stir it in until this is of a real creamy consistency, so that you can incorporate that very well into your milk. And that is just beautiful. I know you're going to just love this. And wait till you see it when it comes out. And you just pour that into the milk. give it a good stir. And by the way, I gave this the little finger test of the count of 10, when I knew that it was ready to go in there. Okay, we're going to take this sheet here of foil and cover that securely so that the heat will be contained in there and the yogurt germ will spread. And then we want to cover this like so and leave it rest for 5 hours, and you're going to be ready to place it in the refrigerator, and I'll show you what it'll look like after it's finished. Well, I promised you you're going to have a yogurt cheese sandwich on my flatbread. And here goes. Here's the yogurt cheese, and here's some nice hot bread that just come off of the grill. And look at them lining up out there. I can't make these fast enough. Well, just a minute, just a minute. You know, I have a mint patch out there, and if Lynn will go out there and pick some more mint, I could make a lot of these, Lynn. But we're going to take that mint and tuck it in there and tuck it in there. And we're just going to roll that together, and wow, do you have a wonderful sandwich? Besides that, look what I made on my charcoal grill. Cheese bread. See the grill marks? That's just as yummy too, but this is so good and tantalizing. Would you like to have that? Oh boy, are we in for a treat. We're going to have some baba ganoush. That's a broiled eggplant with a tahini. And it's all mixed together into making one of the most tantalizing dips you ever had, sprinkled with little pine nuts over it and parsley. And you scoop it up with some of that delicious bread we're going to have later. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to brush a little bit of oil on this so the eggplant doesn't stick to it. A lot of people broil this directly in the oven, but to keep my oven nice and clean, it's so much easier to do this. Now I'm going to take this fork. Before you ever put it in the oven, you've got to pierce this. Let the steam escape, otherwise you'll have an explosion in your oven if you don't pierce the eggplant. You want to pierce that very well all the way around. And let's cut this little tip off of here. We don't need that to be cooking in there. Now we've got a perfectly beautiful eggplant that's nice pierced, and it's going to go directly in the oven. It's going to be broiled. And when it's charred all the way around, we'll take it out of the oven, and then we'll skin it, and we'll run it under cold water so that we can peel the skin off of it, and then we'll proceed to make the pulp into the baba ganoush. As you can see, I've already removed the eggplant, which has been broiled, and it's completely done. And it's a good thing we put that aluminum foil under it. It kept that excess water from spilling out into your stove. Okay, so now we're going to take the pulp. We're going to scrape it with a knife away from the skin so we can make this wonderful baba ganoush that we're going to be relishing shortly. That's easily done. We'll put that. We want to get as much of the pulp as possible, so don't waste any of it. If there's a few seeds, too many for your liking, take them out. Of course, the light seeds aren't as bad as when they get really dark, then you want to remove as many of the seeds as possible. And get that skin off of there. And we want as much of that pulp as possible because that's going to go into mixing with the tahini, into the making of baba ganoush. And by the way, I want to tell you about tahini. I've had so many people ask me exactly what is tahini made of. Tahini is made out of sesame seeds, which is ground with a little oil and giving it that flavor that you get into the making also of hummus. What is known as hummus in many restaurants and in magazines is really, the nomenclature isn't quite complete. It's really called hummus with tahini because tahini is what binds it together to give it that blend. You don't just eat hummus, which is a chickpea. You're eating hummus with tahini. So the real name is hummus with tahini. And in this case, it's a sesame seed paste, which is the tahini, blend in with the broiled eggplant called baba ganoush. Okay, now we've got the flesh ready to go into making of our baba ganoush. We got one whole eggplant here. We're going to take this mortar and kind of crush that down a bit. I could put it in my processor, but I don't want it to get that fine. I like it a little bit on the pulpy side, and I think you might too. I've already measured out about 3 tablespoons of tahini, and there it is. It's when you get a jar of tahini, be sure and mix it well so the oil and the tahini blend together. A lot of times the oil is on top, tahini's at the bottom. You want to stir it very well. I'm going to take that, and I have already pulped with my mortar the 2 cloves of garlic. I'm going to put that in with the tahini. That's what gives it that wonderful flavor, is the garlic. Without garlic, you don't have much of a flavor. And I've got 2 lemons that are already squeezed and 2 tablespoons of water. And I'm going to blend that together. And I'm going to put a teaspoon of salt in with that and mix that well. And now we're going to pour that in with the baba ganoush. And as this sits, it'll thicken up in even more so. That's just a little bit of pulp. We want to chop it a little bit more. I'm going to take a platter here. And this is going to start off our party. A little baba ganoush with a little bit of za'atar chips. That's a pita bread, which we call pocket bread or marakkad, that are going to be broiled with a little za'atar on top. And you just dip that into this wonderful baba ganoush, and you've got the most delicious appetizer you ever wanted to have. Okay, and we're going to garnish this now. I went out to my parsley patch and got a little bit of parsley. And garnish it with a little bit of that. And we're going to sprinkle maybe about a 1/4 cup of pine nuts around it, or whatever you want to use. And what's nice, if pomegranate's in season, you can put pomegranates around it. It gives it a nice, colorful holiday look. Isn't that pretty? And then a lot of times people like to take a little bit of the olive oil and drizzle, maybe make a little dent, drizzle a little olive oil, a little dent, a little olive oil. And that's great for your garnishing. That's it. Baba ganoush. Well, remember the dough that we just made? Now here's another batch of dough, and this time I'm going to be filling it with various fillings like our wonderful sfiha, which is an open-faced meat pie. And if you prefer to close it, you can. But I'll show you how that's done. We're going to make some spinach pies too that are great for the vegetarians. Okay, I've just got this little cutter here. We're going to make some rounds here, or you can pinch the dough off with your fingers if you like. We'll just do this and get these ready for you. I've already got a platter of these made for you. Tantalize your taste buds. And we'll set this dough to one side. Now, I'm just going to roll that out a little bit. And the filling for these meat pies is going to, normally you'd use 2 pounds of ground chuck, an onion that's been chopped, some pine nuts, which I have here, and I've already mixed them in here. And you chop your onions, and you place them in here, and there's the sauteed pine nuts that I placed in here with the chopped onions, and I've added the juice of 4 lemons, and salt and pepper, about a teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. So we're going to take this dough, like so, that I flattened out. We'll take about a tablespoon of meat, place it in the center, push it down, and have a little towel on hand to wipe your hands. And just fold this, and I want to tell you one thing to keep it closed. You always go to the center down, pinch it down, and that'll keep it secure and closed. You want to make a 4-cornered one, go from the center down to the corner, pinch this towards the center and down, and you've got a 4-cornered meat pie. I've already brushed this tray with a little butter, or oil rather in this case. And we're going to take this, show you how to do it one more time. And this meat, by the way, as you can see, it is not cooked, it's not baked, it's just raw in the raw stages, and that keeps it nice and moist. Push that meat over in the corner as much as you can, pinch it again, and pinch it again, and there you have a pretty little, these are wonderful for parties and for visiting guests, and these are the kind that you can freeze also, and they're just wonderful. You take them after they're baked, cooled off, put them in your freezer for those unexpected guests, and you'll have food on the table the minute they arrive. Great way to go on picnics too. I'm going to show you another way that you can fix these for parties. Of course, we like to do the round in most of our breads, and I'll tell you what the round signifies. Round signifies the eternal circle of life. So isn't that rather profound, though, when you think about everything being round? This is another way to fold it. You can fold it and fold it like an accordion style, and you'll have a pretty little round meat pie. And just little nimble fingers, and those corners will crimp up just like that when they come out of the oven. And we'll do, now here's another method that you can do. You can take this, fold it like so, and this way. And this is called laham bi'ajin, which means basically that the meat is encased in the dough. Laham is the meat, ajin is the dough. And I'm going to show you how we're going to do some spinach pies here. We're going to take the same dough. It's marvelous. You can use this dough for just so many toppings. You're going to notice as soon as I'm finished with the entire segment of foods, I've got a platter of dough filled with all kinds of condiments, and one of them is with cheese, and some are topped with pecans and some with English walnuts and 4 cheeses. What we've done here is we've taken, I usually like to get fresh spinach myself, so I get fresh spinach, you salt it down, and you remove all the moisture that comes out. There's still a little bit of moisture in here, so I'm going to take all that out because we don't want it to be in the dough. There. There, that's pretty good. Salt will draw the moisture out of it, so we've got that in there. I've already tossed some onions. I think I'll put a little bit more onion in there. 1 onion for a couple packages of spinach. And I like to add English walnuts, really are just so great. When you're doing a couple packages, you want to have about a cup of English walnuts. And then you want to have the onions. Now here's something that enhances the taste of spinach. Nutmeg. As you can see, I've grated some nutmeg, fresh nutmeg. And you don't want to overpower it, about 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. But that gives it a special flavor. Everybody always asks me, what's that special flavor? It tastes so good. A teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and the juice of a couple of lemons. And oh my goodness, you've got to have olive oil. Olive oil is such an important factor with spinach too. That gives it that wonderful taste that you're going to get when it moistens down and cooks. Okay, I'm going to get a spoon out of here and just mix this together very well. And we'll take a spoonful of this, place it in the center of the dough. We'll take another spoonful over here. I'm going to be sure and get an English walnut in there. Now the spinach pies are going to be closed entirely because you don't want any of that spinach to come oozing out of there. So you close the first corner from the center down, second corner from the center down, and the third corner from the center down. And you've got a nice spinach pie there. And we're going to do the same thing with this. Pull it towards the center, crease it downward to a point, bring this to the center, and bring that crease down to the point, and you've got it encased in the dough, and it will not ooze out. And we'll do one more for you. Oh, by the way, this is delicious just as salad alone, without even putting it in the dough. As a matter of fact, while you're making this, you'll probably reach and stop and have a couple of bites of this. And I'll tell you another thing with this dough, which is so good, is that za'atar. You put za'atar on here. Middle Eastern people love za'atar. They go out of their way for za'atar bread. And that's an herb blend. I think I mentioned that to you before. But anyway, all these recipes can be found in my cookbooks. Many of you have them. If you don't, you'll find out a little bit more about that. So we're going to put those in the oven at a 350-degree oven for 15 minutes. And as soon as they're brown on the bottom, then we're going to broil them for just a minute. You want to watch them so they don't burn. And that's this segment of my dough-filled meat pies and spinach pies. Hope you enjoy them. Rice dressing is an attractive accompaniment to your meal. Ingredients include 6 tablespoons butter, 1/2 cup orzo, 2 cups long grain rice, 4 cups chicken broth or water, and 1 teaspoon salt. This recipe serves 8. To begin with, melt 6 tablespoons butter in a pan set on medium heat. When butter is melted, add 1/2 cup orzo, which is a pasta-like grain. Stir the orzo around in the butter and let it cook until it becomes light brown. When the orzo reaches this stage, add 2 cups uncooked long grain rice. Make sure to thoroughly rinse and drain the rice before adding it to the pan. Continue by stirring these ingredients together for about 2 minutes. During this time, bring 4 cups of chicken broth or water to a boil. Add 1 teaspoon salt to the liquid, then pour this liquid over the pan containing the rice mixture. Reduce the heat to low. Cover the pan and let this mixture cook for 20 minutes or until the liquid is absorbed. The dressing may be served directly from the pan, or for a more festive appearance, lightly grease a 2-quart mold. Spoon the dressing into the mold and keep it warm until you are ready to serve it. When you're ready to serve it, place a plate on top of the mold. Gently invert the mold and remove. You can garnish this with parsley and serve with an entree selection from this tape. Isn't that pretty? This is a main dish selection, a Middle Eastern favorite, stuffed eggplant, batinjane basanigi. The ingredients include 2 eggplants, 1/4 cup oil, 1/2 cup pine nuts, 1 onion, 1 cup ground beef, 1/8 teaspoon allspice, 1/4 teaspoon cinnamon, 1 teaspoon salt, 1/2 teaspoon pepper, 8-ounce tomato sauce. This recipe serves 8. Begin by preparing 2 medium-sized eggplants. When selecting the eggplants, make sure they do not have bruises and are a dark purple. Light-colored eggplants tend to be bitter. Trim off the stem, then cut each eggplant into quarter lengthwise. Place the eggplant into a lightly oiled 9 by 13-inch baking dish. And now with the remaining oil, lightly grease the tops of the eggplant. Place the eggplant in a preheated 450-degree oven for 10 minutes. While it is baking, or after you remove it from the oven, you can start preparing the stuffing. Now, to do so, melt a 1/2 pound of butter in a skillet set on medium heat. Next, add 1/2 cup of pine nuts and saute them for 2 or 3 minutes until they become a light brown. At this point, add 1 chopped onion, stirring lightly, and 1 cup of ground beef. Now, saute this mixture until the meat is no longer pink, about 2 to 3 minutes. To finish the stuffing, stir in the seasonings. These include 1/8 teaspoon allspice, 1/4 teaspoon cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon pepper. Stir the seasonings into the meat mixture and the stuffing is ready for the eggplant. take the baked eggplant. Make a slit down on one side. Hold these apart and stuff each quarter with about 2 tablespoons of the filling. Next, you want to place the stuffed eggplant back into the baking dish. Pour 1 large can of tomato sauce over the tops of the eggplant. Place the pan back in the oven and bake at 350 degrees for an additional 20 minutes. Here's a favorite for all people from Syrian Lebanon. Kibbeh is the national dish of both Syrian and Lebanon. Ingredients call for stuffing the kibbeh with 1 cup of No. 1 or fine cracked wheat, 1 onion, 1½ teaspoon salt, 3/4 teaspoon pepper, 1 pound ground round steak, 1/2 cup ice water, 3 tablespoons butter, 3 tablespoons vegetable oil, 1/2 pound ground beef, 1/4 cup English walnuts or pine nuts, 1/2 teaspoon cinnamon. This recipe will serve 6. To begin, you will need to make the raw kibbeh by rinsing 1 cup of cracked wheat until the water is no longer cloudy. After the cracked wheat is thoroughly rinsed, cup your hand to remove all moisture and place in a large bowl. Then add 1 cup of pureed onions. Next, add 1/2 teaspoon salt and 3/4 teaspoon of pepper. Mix these ingredients together, and once they are combined, add 1 pound of ground round steak. Now, using your hands, mix the meat into the cracked wheat. Now knead the mixture until it's thoroughly combined. So that it will bind together, gradually add 1/2 cup of ice water. And when the mixture reaches a meatloaf type consistency, you may set it aside and prepare the filling. Begin by adding 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil in a skillet set on medium heat. To this, add 1/2 pound ground beef. Sauté the beef until it begins to brown 2 to 3 minutes. Continue by adding 1/4 cup English walnuts or pine nuts, 3/4 teaspoon pepper, 1½ teaspoon salt, and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Stir the seasonings into the ground beef. Then remove the skillet from the heat. Now take the raw kibbeh mixture and, using about 2 tablespoons at a time, form the kibbeh into a football shape. You may want some more ice water handy to keep the dough smooth. Once you get the kibbeh into this shape, use your index finger and begin to gently push into the center, making the shape hollow. As you do this, rotate the kibbeh in your hands. Once the opening is about 1 inch wide, spoon the filling inside. Gently press the hole closed. If needed, use some ice water to smooth the outside. Continue this procedure until all the kibbeh is used. Place the stuffed kibbeh in a baking dish and bake at 450 degrees for 15 minutes and under the broiler for about 3 minutes. Garnish with parsley and walnuts for an attractive main dish. Now, kibbeh happens to be the national dish of Syria and Lebanon. And when you go to prepare this and you're looking for burghul or cracked wheat, I want to caution you. There are No. 1, No. 2, No. 3. It's a fine grain, a medium grain, or a coarse grain. And in this case, we're going to use a fine grain. And whatever you do, like a lot of magazines tell you, boil your wheat before using it. No, that's a no-no. You're taking all the nutritious portions of the wheat out, all the protein that goes into this and the fiber. So what you want to do is barely soak this. I've already taken 1 cup of wheat, and I have it soaked here. And you just soak it for a few minutes. And this has already been soaked for a few minutes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and pour it in my colander. It's a fine strained colander, and I'm going to be squeezing all of the moisture out of it. This is my bowl here. Bring this up here so you can see it. Squeeze the moisture out of it, put it in the bowl. Squeeze the moisture out as much as possible. Put it in the bowl. And we have 2 pounds of meat here, and we've got 1 onion and 1 teaspoon of salt, which I'm going to pour into the wheat. bit of pepper goes into the wheat. And we're going to mix that together along with 1 onion. And you want to puree your onion because you don't want any chunks of onion left into this. So when you get this all blend together, you're going to see the delicious taste that you get out of this. And you can eat this raw. As a matter of fact, kibbe comes first and foremost in the raw stage, what is called kibbeh. And kibbeh is set on the table every Sunday of the Syrian Lebanese home. Just as Italians have spaghetti, the Middle East people have kibbeh. From this kibbeh, we're going to be making, as you saw in the previous tape, some football-shaped kibbeh stuffed with the pine nuts and the meat chunks that have been sautéed, and they're just heavenly. But today, we're going to be making a baked kibbeh, and I'm going to show you the way you prepare the baked kibbeh. Now, when you're blending this together, you want to keep a bowl of ice water on hand to help bind this together so you can incorporate the wheat real well with the meat and kind of push that down like you would be kneading a bread dough. A little ice water in there and just keep blending it together. Make sure all the cracked wheat goes into this mixture. And I'm going to give you a taste of the raw meat pretty soon. I had a class not long ago. I was making all these different things, and they all wanted to taste the kibbeh, and they loved it. And nowadays, you know, it's like having steak tartare, so you don't have to be fearful. Just make sure that you go to the grocery store and your meat man knows what you're using this meat for. When you tell him kibbeh, that all of the fat and sinews have to be taken out of it, so there's no trace of fat in the meat at all. It's just pure lean meat. It's a lean steak, and it really does taste good. Okay, so now I've pretty much finished incorporating the wheat into the meat with the seasonings, and we're going to be making a little tray of kibbeh sanihi. Kibbeh sanihi is baked kibbeh, and it's in a tray. I've already prepared a baked tray of kibbeh, but I'm going to show you the method that we use by using this very small tray right now. First of all, you want to brush your pan with butter. Brush it very nicely. Okay, now we're going to start making this by forming patties that are going to be placed next to one another, covering the tray completely on the bottom. You form it like a hamburger patty. I'd say about anywhere from 1/4 of an inch thick to 1/2 an inch thick. And that'll give you a nice base. We're going to remember, you're going to be doing this at the bottom of the tray, putting the filling on top, and then topping it with another layer of this raw kibbeh. Isn't that pretty? Let me move this over here so you can see it. Okay. And it doesn't really take that long. You just grab a handful of meat, put it into a patty with your palms, and press down on it. Dip your hand in ice water. Always have that bowl of ice water on hand. It makes a lot of difference in binding the meat together. And you want to try to fill in any spaces because you want to fill this whole tray up without any spots left unopened. Here we go. We're going to put that in there. And there's a spot there, and there's a little spot here. Now we've got that covered up completely. And we're going to take the filling, which I've already prepared. This filling is the same filling that you had in the previous recipe of your football kibbles. We're going to take it. It's got ground beef, in this case ground chuck, been sauteed in butter. And we've sauteed the onions and the pine nuts with a hint of cinnamon and allspice and salt and pepper. I'm just going to and of course your pine nuts add that flavor to it. There's 2 ways. You'll notice in the previous recipe I used English walnuts for the kibbeh kras. This one is with pine nuts. Okay, we're going to spread that evenly so that when you bite into it, everybody gets a taste of the filling. There we go. One for good measure. Now we're going to take this kibbeh again. And again, we're going to form the patties. Top it with this patty. Form it like a hamburger shape and get right into the corners there so that you've got all the corners covered. you're going to see that I'm going to be topping this with clarified butter. Clarified butter and rendered butter are one and the same. It just so happens that if people don't know what you're talking about, you want to boil your regular butter until the steam no longer appears on top. And you'll see all this residue that comes to the top of the pan. Well, that is salt. You skim off the salt, and you have pure clarified butter. And it's sweet. We use it in all our pastries. We use it in rice dishes. It makes a lot of difference the kind of butter you're using. That's why our foods really have a unique taste in it, because of the butter. And if you have any difficulty making it, just remember, you don't do what a lady told me not long ago. She said, "What's wrong with my butter? I keep stirring it and stirring it." I said, "Forevermore you don't stir it, you're stirring the salt back into it. You just let it sit on it." I make 5 pounds at a time. You let it boil, then you simmer it down until that steam no longer appears. Now, there we've got the top layer. You want to smooth that out with ice water. And now we're going to take this clarified butter. After I've cut this, first of all, I want to cut this in a diamond shape. Okay, we're going to start like so. Dip your knife in water. There we go. And you're going to do it at an angle until you form diamonds like this. Once you get the knack of it, you'll be doing it on a weekly basis. There we go. Now we're going to just kind of pierce the center of each one of these so that the butter can drizzle into that and bake it just to a heavenly golden shade. See that? Pretty? Okay, now I'm going to take this butter. Let's say about, for this kind of a tray, about half a cup should do. A larger tray takes the whole cup. And you're going to bake this in your oven at 400 degrees for 40 minutes. And then you put it up in the upper portion of the oven for another 15 or 20 minutes, and you've got a golden brown. And here we are, to a nice golden shade. Isn't that pretty? And from this you get about 45 cuts. So you've got kibbe, baked kibbe that you can serve your guests anytime, any place. Great for picnics, great for a Sunday dinner, just great anytime with the rest of your meal. Or put a side dish of yogurt with it, and it's heavenly. And a nice tossed salad drizzled with olive oil and lemon juice. What more can you want? And now we're going to make you some tabbouleh. Tabbouleh is the health salad of the Middle East, made of this high fiber, full of iron grain called burghal in Arabic, and cracked wheat when you go to the store to buy it. Also burghal at the store, but I want to caution you to be careful the texture of grain that you get. It's for tabbouleh, it's either a fine grain or a medium grain, but not the coarse. The coarse is the only kind of burghal that you use for cooking. You do not boil this, because that will take out of all the health benefits, your protein and your fiber and so forth. So you want to just soak it, as I've done here. I've already pre-soaked this, and you see it swells after it's soaked, and I squeeze the water dry. So you don't have to leave it soaking too long, because you're going to find that the tomatoes that I'm chopping here, the juice from the tomatoes will absorb into the wheat, so that will give it that extra flavor while it's absorbing into the wheat, rather than the water absorbing into it. I've got to tell you while I'm chopping my tomatoes here, that there's a special song that we sing for our guests when we're inviting them for tabbouleh, and that's Mayil Yagzayil, Yagzayil Mayil, Mayilak Mayuli, Ayilak Ayul, Namilak Tabbouleh, and so forth and so on. And that basically means, come on over, you little dear, I want to fix you some tabbouleh. And won't you stay for a while so we can chat? It's been such a long time. I'm chopping up about 4 tomatoes, 2 bunches of parsley, a bunch of onions, scallions, whatever you want to call them. These I just picked from my garden. I've already made a big platter, so we're going to show you the method that we use here. You want to chop the tomatoes very fine, And I run my parsley through my Cuisinart. You want to make sure that the parsley is stemmed first, and you go ahead and I run it through the Cuisinart while it's dry. I always use a food dryer so that I can do that, and I'll show you how well it turns out. I've got some already chopped here, and this is the curly parsley, not the flat parsley. I'm going to go ahead. This is 1 cup of cracked wheat in there. We're just going to go ahead and put most of that parsley in. And then I'm not going to use a dry mint, or a fresh mint rather. I find that the dry mint has much more flavor, and it's very palatable. So that's that's a half a cup for this amount that I'm making. Okay, now we've got a half a teaspoon of pepper, and we've got a teaspoon of salt, and we just want to glaze it with, let's see, did I put my onions? Not yet. We'll put the onions in too. And I want to glaze it with 1/4 cup of olive oil. Oh, that really gives it a special flavor. And the juice of 4 lemons. And we're going to put some more of these chopped onions here that I've got. And some more of these chopped tomatoes. Get that in there. And I'm going to show you one of the nice things that you could do about this when you're entertaining. You can also scoop out some tomatoes and fill them up. I'll show you here. I've got a couple scooped out. I had a party for 100 people for a wedding shower once, and I scooped out 100 tomatoes. Can you imagine? And they just loved it. It's so easy to do. And you can scoop out peppers and fill them up. But you take your tabbouleh and just put it in your little tomato cups. And they look so pretty when you're decorating your platter. I'll put another little tomato on top there. And I'm going to show you another thing. You can take peppers and fill the peppers. Line your platter with peppers, colorful ones. I've already put a little tabbouleh in there. I bet somebody's getting hungry out there, huh? And I'll tell you another thing, you know, like back in the nomad days when utensils weren't available, they used lettuce leaves or grape leaves to scoop this salad up and just tuck it in those grape leaves. And the fresh grape leaves from the vine, we always had a vineyard of grapes and grape leaves, and we just pull them down from our grape arbor and start to scoop up our tabbouleh. And it's so luscious. So I hope you're going to enjoy that too. You're going to enjoy making that, believe me. This is a classic recipe for grape leaf rolls, and it's a favorite for the young as well as adults. Ingredients include 1 cup long grain rice, 1 pound chuck beef ground, 2 teaspoons salt, 1 teaspoon pepper, 50 grape leaves, 2 chicken backs and 2 chicken wings, which are optional, 2 lemons, and water. This recipe yields 50 rolls. Begin by making the filling. Start with 1 cup long grain rice that has been rinsed and drained. To this, add 1 pound ground beef, 1 teaspoon salt, and 1 teaspoon pepper. Then, using your hands, knead these ingredients together. You may need a small amount of ice water to bind the mixture. Before working with the grape leaves, soak them in hot water for 10 minutes. Then, working with 1 leaf at a time, lay them flat and place 1 tablespoon of the filling at the bottom of the leaf. Fold the sides in and roll the bottom up. Gently roll away from you the remainder of the leaf. You'll repeat this procedure with each leaf. After you have finished that step, place the chicken legs and 2 chicken wings on the bottom of the pan. Or if you happen to have rhubarb on hand, that'll work fine too. Lay the rolls on top of the chicken, crisscrossing each layer. Sprinkle 1 teaspoon of salt on top. Then add juice of 2 lemons, and then add an inverted plate on top of the rolls. Add just enough water to reach the plate. Now you'll want to cover the pan and cook the rolls on low heat for 50 minutes. This is one of our main desserts for this meal, mouth-watering baklava rolls. The ingredients include 3 cups sugar, 2 cups water, juice of 1 lemon, 4 cups chopped English walnuts, 1/2 cup sugar, 2 teaspoons of orange blossom water, 1 pound phyllo dough, and 1 pound of clarified butter. To start with, place 3 cups of sugar in a medium-sized saucepan. Gradually add 2 cups water, stirring until the sugar is dissolved. Bring this mixture to a boil, and then add the juice of 1 lemon. The lemon will keep it from crystallizing and will give it body. Cook for 15 minutes on medium heat, and then add 1 teaspoon of orange blossom water. While the syrup is cooking, prepare the filling by adding together 4 cups of chopped English walnuts and 1/2 cup sugar. Stir these ingredients together, then add 1 teaspoon of orange blossom water. Now unfold the phyllo dough and lightly brush the sheets with part of the clarified butter. Use about 4 sheets with each roll. You must move quickly so the dough does not dry out. And you must cover that sheet completely with the butter. That's what gives you a nice flaky, puffy dough for the making of this baklava. Continue by distributing the nut mixture and spooning the bottom of it on the phyllo, dividing evenly so that you'll have enough for 5 rolls. You'll notice that I'm cupping my hands and with a spoon so that the nuts will be distributed evenly across the roll. Continue by folding the sides in and the bottom up. Then gently but firmly roll up the rest of the phyllo. And you want to do this tightly so the nuts do not fall out. This is a nice firm roll. Slit the top of the rolls at a diagonal into 1-inch pieces and bake at 325 degrees on the middle shelf of the oven for 30 minutes. I'm brushing the top of the phyllo dough with some extra butter so it'll give it that nice glistening taste. Now placing it in the tray, the oven has been preheated, as I said, at 325 degrees. And we're going to bake an additional, that's for 30 minutes, and then we bake an additional 5 minutes on the top shelf for 5 minutes until a golden shade. Remember, when pouring the syrup, one or the other should be cold or hot. In this case, we've already made the syrup, so we're pouring cold syrup over hot baklava. Now we are coming to the point of the evening at the end of the meal where you're going to have this piece de resistance, and that's the fabulous ricotta cheese pastries that just melt in your mouth. You'll be asked for seconds once you start tasting them. And I want to tell you one thing. Do you often have guests and you're a little bit remiss because you don't have anything for a diabetic to serve when you have all these pastries? You don't have to worry about that anymore because here's one that's just as yummy with the syrup as it is without. And in order to take away the bland taste of ricotta cheese, I'm going to add sweetener instead of just regular sugar. And that, believe me, will cause you to have people saying, I want that recipe, I've got to have it. I'm going to start with taking an egg, breaking it into the bowl, and whisking it. And then I've got a 15-ounce carton of ricotta cheese, which I've already put the sugar in there, or in this case, the sweet and low. I'm going to add that to this egg and mix it very well. If you have a carton of ricotta cheese that you get and there's a lot of water or whey on the top of it, drain that so it won't ooze out of your package. Okay, this is mixed very well. Now I'm going to show you how to cut through the easy way of a package of phyllo dough. A lot of times you might happen to get a package of phyllo dough that is torn or dry or cracked, and that's okay. Don't worry about it because you can still salvage all those pieces, and we'll see what kind of a package we have here. Okay? We're going to take this, unroll this, and in this case, I'm going to do it the fast way. I'm going to cut right through the entire package. It's still folded as you unroll it, as you can see, and we're going to cut right through it like this. This saves a lot of time instead of cutting one sheet at a time. And there's nicely package there, and we're going to use like 4 sheets to 1 ricotta cheese pastries, and you're going to see what I'm talking about. I've already clarified my butter, and I mentioned to you earlier, you clarify it by removing all the salt. In other cases, it's called rendered butter. It's not a substitute for sweet butter, by the way. Sweet butter seems to have a certain amount of additive that still brings a little salt to the top, and the taste isn't still as sweet and as delicate as this is. So we're going to set that to one side, and keeping the phyllo right here on this paper, I'm going to wrap up this phyllo, and I work fast so it won't dry out. But if you have a tendency to work very slow, I'll tell you what you do. You take this cloth and dampen it, but never put the phyllo. When you hear people say put it on a damp cloth, that's a no-no. You put wax paper on top of the dampened cloth. You don't want the phyllo to adhere on anything damp, or it just won't work very well. Okay, so now we're going to start right now by taking 4 sheets of this phyllo dough. I'm going to unfold it where I cut it. I'll take 1 sheet at a time. And there's my clarified butter. I'll place this on the board. And with brush in hand at all times, I never release the brush from my hand when I'm working with it, because it goes so much faster. And you pull the second sheet apart. And don't worry if there's a little tear in it, because it'll be hidden by the time you get it all folded up. That's 1, 2. That's okay, that'll never show when it's folded. 3. And 4. Now we're going to take our ricotta, a little spoonful here. Now this is what's important. Let me move that so you can see. You want to take that ricotta and place it a little inwardly, and your first fold overlaps, but it's your second fold that's extremely important. You want to bring that fold right up, squared away with the edge of that phyllo. Now once you've done that, now watch how easy it'll fold into a triangle. Bring it again, squared away to the edge, and then brush. Squared away with the edge, brush, 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 and brush, and you've got a beautiful little ricotta cheese pastry. You're going to put those in the oven for 15 minutes on the middle shelf, and it'll turn a golden brown at the bottom, and then you leave it on the same shelf in the oven and put it under broil for a couple of minutes, and you have to watch it extremely close because you don't want to burn it. And this is such a delicate pastry that you do want to keep your eyes on it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I've got a tray already baked here, but I want you to see the procedure that we're going to use. Again, we're going to put this ricotta here, about a tablespoonful, for these are extremely large. But I want to tell you, when you cut through this, you can also cut them much smaller if you want a little bit of a smaller pastry. If you're serving a lot of desserts and you don't want them to have such a big piece, then you just cut them about 6 across instead of 5 sheets across. See that? That's all going to puff up. And you don't want to use less than 4 sheets. If you use 2 sheets, it's not going to puff up as well. You use 3 sheets. If you're at the tail end of things, they'll be okay. And if they stick together and like this at the end, we'll say, that's okay. Just do this. Salvage any extra pieces that are on the inside, and tuck that back and take whatever pieces you have. Now this makes 4 sheets. Here's another one here. Stuck together, but it's okay. We'll just brush away perfectly. And as I said, keep your brush in your hand. There's no point in putting it down because that has butter on it. Speaking of butter, you might say, gee, that's an awful lot of butter, but it really isn't. By the time you finish baking these, you're going to see that a certain amount of excess butter is drizzled into the pan. So you want to transfer those ricottas from that pan into another pan that you have sitting to one side, and you'll recycle that butter. It'll be just great because you can use that butter again, and it's not going to be absorbing as much butter as you actually think, just enough to make it puff up like a puff pastry. And I've had people asking me if you can make this out of puff pastry. I prefer the phyllo dough for this kind of a dessert because it just is so delicate. And you saw in the previous dessert that we made, the baklava. By the way, our baklava is not called baklava. The Greeks call it baklava, and they use a honey syrup. We use a simple syrup that's made with an essence of orange flower water. It gives it such a delicate flavor. And you use that same syrup for this dessert, if you're not a diabetic. If you're a diabetic, omit the syrup. Now we're going to just make one more, and then I'm going to show you a finished tray. I'll move this over so you can see it. See how simple that was? There. And then from these you can make these spanakopita with spinach and feta cheese, which are an appetizer. But in this case, we're using it for dessert. Okay? Now, I'm going to bring over to you a tray of ricotta cheese pastries that have already been baked. That's part of that package of dough that you saw. What I'm going to do, while they're still hot, I want to take this syrup that I've made, and I prepared the syrup just as you saw in the baklava recipe. 3 cups of sugar, 2 cups of water, a lemon to keep it from crystallizing, and and then you boil that together, and at the end you pour the orange flower water over it. Now, one or the other should be hot. In this case, the ricottas are hot, and the syrup is cold. You can't have hot on hot, or the desserts will become very soggy. You can almost hear that sizzling when you pour it on cold on hot. And there's your delicious ricotta cheese pastries. That's our piece de resistance. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. If you will excuse me, I'm going to call it party time. I'm going to go and change into my caftan, and we're going to set the table and feast away the night. I hope you enjoy, and when we do, we're going to say, because our foods are so healthy, we're going to say la sahatkum, which means to your health. Well, here we are in my dining room, and I'm ready to feed you with this phrase, tfadalu. That means welcome to my home and to my table. And we're going to start out by offering you a fabulous dip. It's called eggplant dip. Baba ganoush. It's made with broiled eggplant and sesame seed paste. And you'll notice these little pocket bread chips that I put there. I brushed some za'atar on them. And it's wonderful to use as a dip. And then from there, we're going to go right over to the dish next to it, which is a yogurt cucumber salad. And it's topped with dried mint. And then we have another salad right here. It's the tabbouleh salad. Well, you know what the tabbouleh salad is, the health salad of the Middle East. And there's a couple of tomato cups there. I've got some more to offer you when those are finished. And then we're going to start with our breads, okay? Here we have the meat pies, the spinach pies, and we've got some cheese tarts, and I've got some bread here that we're going to, we call this salami, and we just break that in half and offer our guests a piece to place on their plate. And then we're going to come over to these breads on this side, which is a pocket bread, or we call this mrakkad. You can break that open and slip your yogurt right in the center. And remember, this is all made from the same yeast dough. It depends on the temperature of your oven, how you want to make this bread. And there's the za'atar, the tantalizing za'atar. You're going to start your breakfast off with that, or it's nice during the meal too. And then these are the breads that I made on the grill that you saw a little bit earlier, that we tucked some mint in and brushed it with yogurt cheese. And this is the main entree, one of the main entrees. It's my rice hashwi, and that has ground lamb in it, and it's mixed with pine nuts, and it's cooked in clarified butter to give it that distinct, wonderful flavor. And then you'll notice we have some shish kebab with the grilled vegetables on it, and we've got a chicken grill with vegetables on it, and that makes a really nice meal. But the side dishes here are the grape leaf rolls. Everybody loves grape leaf rolls. Stuffed with rice and meat, and a little bit of lemon juice squeezed on it to give it a little bit more tartness. And then we've got several kinds of kibbe here. We've got the baked kibbe. This is the baked kibbe, and this is what we call kibbe kras. Those are stuffed with pine nuts and meat, ground beef. And those are just heavenly to just munch on. And right over here, it's summertime, and we've got stuffed squash. I came in from Terre Haute the other day at Mom's Garden and brought my squash with me, rather, and I stuffed them here tonight. And see, this was a squash that was getting a little bit big, but it's harvest time. And Mom just loved it when I showed her that her garden was producing so many nice vegetables. And then the grape leaf rolls. I think I mentioned that to you before. Well, that's our beautiful array of food. Oh, these I want to be sure and mention to you. This is a yogurt cheese. You saw me making yogurt a little bit earlier. This is yogurt balls that we put in oil that you can keep as a preservative and use it anytime you want to wrap on that bread. And then the grand finale is our dessert. This is the baklawi rolls made into a roll. You can cut them any size you want to. It has a nice glaze of simple syrup on it. And then the ricotta cheese pastries. This time I made these without the syrup because I have a lot of diabetic people coming in tonight to have a dessert. So I wanted to give them a chance to taste something also that's good. And then the other guests, if they want to try it with the syrup, I kept some on hand. Well, I want to tell you, we have a very profound saying. It says, Allah Ta'ala, kol et am. So that's basically what I'm doing. God fed you, eat and feed.